Hello, and welcome once again to Age of Wonders Planetfall. Or I guess to be more correct, the Paradox Forums and the Age of Wonders Planetfall patch notes. My name, as always, is Orange, and this video is going to be talking over the Diplodocus update and patch notes, as well as I think I'll tack on a quick discussion on the Shakarn to the end here. Nothing like a deep dive, but just kind of show what the units are and maybe give my first initial impressions on the race as I've seen them in these first few days of the DLC here, Invasions. But that'll be at the end. For now, we'll start into Diplodocus. Similar to the T-Rex patch notes, I'm looking at this from a multiplayer perspective, so a lot of the single-player stuff I'm going to skip over very quickly. I'm also not going to go through line by line too much. I'm going to try to just pull out some of the highlights, give a little bit of commentary here and there, but not go line by line, read line by line is too much if I can avoid it. I think that's it as far as the preamble, so let's get right into it. This is the Diplodocus update, so as you may not be surprised by, the focus is on diplomacy and some AI changes. I don't know if they're practical, like actual changes, or if it's just a better description of what was already going on under the hood. But either way, those are the headliners for everyone but me. Again, I play almost exclusively multiplayer. I really don't care about AI diplomacy at all. But the majority of the fan base is single player, so I'm sure this is a great upgrade for them. It's just not a huge deal for me. And so I will skip right past it. Something that's a little bit bigger deal for me, they've done a quality of life change on combat cards here. You can choose either just humans or AI, and then tweak how you want combat cards to actually work for either one. It's just a nice little change to let people be a little more precise about how they would like to play a game in multiplayer. So I think that's good. Nice little change. A lot of these other ones are either single player things or things I consider more of a bug fix than a real balance change, so I'll kind of skip through all that. We have some UI name changes of stuff, some most single player things. This is a very nice little quality of life change. Having the visual indication of mind control units or clone units is just nice and clean. I actually think this is an extension. Maybe I'm forgetting, but I thought that they had already done this for stuff like the pain share pain ability that the Kyoko support unit has. But I might be just totally off base with that. Either way, it's a very nice little quality of life fix for making battles a lot cleaner and easier to do without taking a million years. New maps, they're all in water, which I'll talk about in a hot minute. That water has been buffed, but I just don't think I'll see a lot of these maps, because I just don't think water is, even after 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 buffs that it's been now, I just don't think water is going to be a huge focus. But maybe, I don't know. It's nice that they add more maps. I can't really complain about new stuff, even if it's not exactly the new stuff I would have preferred that they add. Diplomacy, again, it's nice for many people in the game. For me, not too much of this matters at all, except this has a very niche importance where you now can go over your influence cap in a turn as long as you're under it by the end of the turn. You won't lose that excess. That could rarely come up in a game, and it's just a nice, again, more quality of life change of not having to fiddle and be super concerned about some of those things if you're not sure. Oh, I have to make sure that not only am I below 200, but I'm below enough that if I get a happiness event that's influence, I won't roll way above. Yeah, it's just nice that this is more of a soft cap than a hard cap now, and that you can always just buy yourself below 200 influence if for some reason you've gone above it in a turn. The big highlight for me here is in this general balance. They rebalanced the weapons trees. So if I switch over to the online tech tree here, you can see that each of the tiers of technology here in the weapons lines are connected. So you can get one of these two and then go immediately to one of these two, etc., etc. Or you can still get both. They're not exclusive. As part of this, that means that all the tech trees that were higher in the line, so like ARC for the assembly here used to be a tier 2 tech, a tier 4 tech, a tier 6 tech. They've now just shifted down. So each weapon's tech is locked into tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 4s, tier 6s, tier 8s instead of the 1, 3, 5, 7 and the 2, 4, 6, 8. So just again, a nice change. I think it'll really open up some more potential builds. Some of it depends on exactly what weapons trees you have. A lot of times you'll just want to pick one to stick with it, but taking assembly as an example here, something like Arc Retaliation, it's a decent mod, but it's not a great mod for Arc units, because most of the Arc units are range damage dealers, just kind of by definition. So you would only get this if you were going for a more melee build for something, which probably means a secret tech. Maybe it means scavengers. But if you're doing secret tech, then this is just a total waste of a tech, unless you're, well, for any melee secret tech, this would be a total waste of a tech. And if you were going scavengers, same deal. You would need to get a whole tech that's just not useful to you. But now you can take this tier 1 firearms tech as a value pick for if you're scavengers, you probably just run it. But even if your real goal is Arc Retaliation, you have this fallback of I can take flechettes, throw them on whatever few scavengers I do have while I'm building, or while I'm actually want to go into melee units. But that extra little bit of flexibility has just really let you dictate better how your build might flow. So very strong change, great buff to the weapons trees. They always kind of were easily ignored in many builds. I think it's a how-to choice now to just drop them, especially because now early on you have a lot of choices and flexibility in those choices for each race to pick. As part of that, specifically for the bio tree, many melee attacks now can equip the bio mods, which is great because the two bio races for Amazon and Kirko, they specifically point to the Kirko and say, hey, Frenzied have a claw unit, now they can equip these bio mods and use, or they always could equip it, but now the bio mod will apply to the primary attack. For the Amazons as well, Amazons have a bunch of animals, many of which have melee abilities that are not bio, and you didn't always have great choices of damage improving mods on them. And with this change, you have the bio mods, which have just kind of interesting little flexibility there. That's pretty cool. I don't know if it's going to be meta precisely, but I'm all for adding in some of these little niche interactions that are just very, very cool to have. I will talk about the rest of the BIOS, or the rest of the weapons tree stuff in the specific section about them later on. Anything else I want to talk about here? Just that these evolving units, or metamorphosis units, whatever, evolving units, get a health boost if you actually evolve them up. This makes sense. I don't know if it was 100% necessary, but I can understand why they did it. It is possible that if you have, like, let's say you have a tier 1 Hopper Hound and you get it up to an elite level, if it would stay at the elite level, it would be getting, I think it'd be, whatever, like 20 extra HP, something like that. And when you go to the tier 2 after the fight, it immediately loses all of its levels. So it becomes a recruit level tier 2. And that is close to being an overall downgrade. in certain situations, because you've lost a ton of defense in favor of that offensive boost of your primary attack is better now. So letting specifically the units that have evolved, the ones you've been babying and carrying around for whatever reason, just have that little extra boost to them. It's a nice way to reward players for going through that much effort. I don't think it'll come up too much in multiplayer. I haven't really heard or seen or tried any evolving builds in Planetfall. It was a thing in Age of Wonders, but there were a lot more units that could do it. In Planetfall, you basically would have to be Amazon, where you'd have to be getting kind of lucky in what you were evolving. And again, this is limited to Psyfish, Hopperhound, and Megasow, so it doesn't apply to the Kirko evolving units, which otherwise would be the only ones that you could mass. So this is, again, I think more of a quality of life single player thing, not going to matter too much, but worth talking about. And then just some more kind of quality of life fixes and interactions that they've, I don't know if I want to say cleaned up, but there's always these weird little things that they can be making things present a lot cleaner and prevent some of this. Like this would be kind of a trap if you would take the Watchman Hero skill. Well, you have a better option. Why would you ever take Watchman? So just remove that worst option. Remove that trap for people that don't know any better. There's a whole bunch of those little things scattered around in this patch particularly. All of this combined is just that water has been buffed again pretty significantly. I still just don't know. Maybe it's the maps I play. I play almost always Pangea. Maybe if I play continents, or maybe if I play in bigger groups of people, the water game will become a little more important. But you can't settle water. You can't conquer colonies from the water. I just don't see how units that are so limited in application, no matter how much better they are than the land units, they're just not going to be worth it. And maybe if it looks like this time they're looking at the economy and saying, well, if we buff the rewards of being in the water, maybe that'll draw people out there. I mean, it's possible. I guess if one player abandons it and the other person does not, maybe they get enough of an economic boost to have justified it. I don't know, though. That really seems like a stretch to me. It does mean that the Shakarn in particular have an advantage there, because all of their units are either amphibious or floating, so good on them. But we'll see how the meta shakes out with those guys in the future. In the meantime, we'll see. I don't think water will ever really be a big, impactful section of the game, but I could be wrong. I'm often wrong. Going into the more kind of specific line-by-line stuff, not too much has changed with the races. Obviously, the weapons trees are kind of technically tied to the races, but if you're looking at the racial trees themselves, pretty quiet. It obviously wasn't a focus in the whatever they use to determine what gets changed. This go around, they weren't looking at the races, which makes sense. They did a lot of looking at the races and Tyrannosaurus, and they're making the DLC, so I can't fault them for that. Quality of life fix for flesh cherry implants, guiding presence, got buffed a little bit, no real issue with that. Arc Power Blast got buffed. I don't think it's a huge buff. It always was more of a defensive ability anyways, and anything that's in range of Arc Power Blast is most likely a melee unit. Going into defense mode, melee units ignore the evasion that gives you, so I don't think this is a huge buff by any means to Indentured. I don't really know if they needed it either, but I can't really complain that it happened. They made that change and it's fine, so nothing either good or bad about that. This is again kind of quality of life stuff where instead of just covert operations, let's make it just work for everything. The Trooper grenade change here, there's actually another grenade or maybe even two later on in the patch notes. Before this patch, grenades were kind of split into some of them had a cooldown, some of them did not. It looks like they finally got around to going, that seems dumb, let's standardize it, and they decided to standardize with the cooldown as opposed to once per battle, which should be fine. The reason I say should is because for troopers, if you ever watched them, their battle AI did really stupid stuff with grenades. However, I have heard anecdotally from people, not personally, I haven't played a Vanguard game yet, but I've heard anecdotally that the trooper AI seems to be a lot better about that now. So putting the grenade on cooldown won't mean necessarily that the AI is going to make really stupid decisions with it repeatedly instead of just once in an auto combat. If that is true, if they have tweaked that AI, then this is a buff for the trooper, because it won't hurt them in auto, and then in manual you have that extra little bit of flexibility of being able to grenade more than once. If they haven't made any changes and it is still, and the AI is still making really bad decisions with troopers in auto combat, then this probably is a net nerf, at least for the game modes I play, because you will be autoing a lot more than you're fighting player versus player, and then by putting it under cooldown, you're just giving the AI way more chances to do something stupid. Either way, I don't think it's a huge difference. The difference of having the grenade on cooldown would certainly be less than if that's a real AI change. That whatever the AI change would have been is probably a bigger difference than the cooldown changes, is what I'm getting at. So similar to how Arc Power Blast now is this defense mode thing, yes, it is changing the unit. Yes, it can be interpreted as a buff. I don't think the unit necessarily needed it in either case, but I also don't think the change is big enough to really be impactful. Moving on now to the secret text, there's more discussion here certainly, but a lot of these are also not super impactful, and it's, again, a smaller patch just in general as far as the basic tweaking numbers goes. Yeah, there's only 5 of the 7 secret texts that even got looked at. Oh no, there's 6, right, because there's a couple lines here to here. Anyways, the other thing about this is a lot of the changes are stuff like this, where, hey, you would never want to do this anyways. This is more of a bug fix than a than a balance change. Similar to this, Aztec Confiscator, yep, it excludes melee. It never was supposed to be melee to begin with. It includes psionic attacks, yep, that probably should have always been like that anyway. So a lot of these line-by-line changes are less balance and more bug fix, or maybe quality of life, fixing oversights sort of things. As far as what is a actual balance change, Aegis tanks got moved down a tech tier. Part of that is a buff to them, but a lot of that is actually just, if we again go to the tech tree here, at the tier 5 slot, most of the secret techs are at that tier 5 slot, and the ones that are an exemption have a very good reason for it. One of them is Xenoplague, and the other is Malictors. So putting it to the tier 5 just seems like that's a lot more fair as far as where that should have been to begin with. There was no reason for the Aegis tank to be more expensive. It wasn't that great of a unit. Otherwise, again, these are all more quality of life oversight fixes. Phoenix Walkers got buffed. I do think Promethean is still probably one of the weaker secret techs. Not the weakest, but one of the weaker ones. I don't know if Phoenix Walkers were ever necessarily the issue, but it can't hurt for them to be a little better. So, yes, they lost damage, but going to a 2-hex AoE is a pretty big buff. Not being a melee ability probably doesn't matter. There's not a lot of cases where I think that would have. So, yep, it's cool that they're better. They're doubly better, actually, because they're also cheaper to tech into. I'll have to try that and see if I think Phoenix Walkers are a realistic thing to aim for now. They're still just going to be limited because they're all plasma attacks, so you can't. You're pretty inflexible with how they get modded up. This is kind of a confusing line from some of the discussions on the Discord. What this actually means is just that the Echo Despair is now considered similar to like a clone unit or a spawn unit, to where if it's the last unit you have in the fight will end and you will have lost. It used to be what a quote-unquote vital unit is like a real unit. It's a unit that you built and brought into the fight. You can't lose while it still is alive, but Echo Despair is something that is going to be spawned in somehow after one of your units has died. If you don't have any real units in the fight, you can't win it, because otherwise it would have been possible to win a fight, but then all of your temporary units die, and so both players just have nothing left. So yeah, that's, again, quality life / oversight fix. Compromise has been pretty significantly tweaked here, actually as part of a general look, I think, on a couple of the status effects. I will say that this change obviously is adding flexibility, but it is giving up some power. So if you had access to arc damage, Compromise was extremely strong, but a lot of races just didn't have access to it unless they were going hackers. Being able to just get consistently good like benefits now from Compromise, regardless of your weapon channel or your damage channel, is nice. And I think being so much more flexible is going to outweigh the fact that, specifically if you were going heavy into hackers, that your power has come down because you've lost 33% of your previous damage boost. Even if you're going relatively mono unit in your armies, you're probably going to be bringing quite a few things that are not hackers, which in most cases are also not going to be out damage. So that extra damage applied by the rest of your army to the target should probably outweigh what you've lost from whatever your specific unit hackers would have been doing. I will call this a net buff, even though it is probably supposed to be more of a side grade for what Compromise did. And then again, some description changes, nothing that's a real balance thing there. Quantum Avatar got very lightly nerfed. I don't think it's enough. I think it's still firmly classified as a broken mod in my mind, but I'll take what I can get. Again, I had talked about grenades before. Gravity Pulse was one of the other ones that was a once per battle as opposed to a cooldown. They've now standardized it to a cooldown and then massively upped the chance of instability while they were at it. A couple of the super broken good Echo Walkers got less broken good, but they're still ridiculous. And then the assembly got slightly better, which they were giving up a point of damage in exchange for Assimilate. I have no issue with their Echo Walker just getting a straight buff. That's totally fine. It's not going to suddenly make Assembly the best race out there. Xenoplague, for some reason they specifically point out just for these two units that the melee attacks for Plague Lord and Destroyer are claws, which is great. These units actually already were able to use bio attacks because they had a bio ranged, or not bio attacks, bio mods, because they had a bio damage channel ranged attack. Now that those mods would also apply to the primary, which means you could actually reasonably put those mods on Xenoplague. So Amazon Xeno and Kirko Xeno were already both extremely good combinations, and this is just going to make them even better. Which I don't I don't have a problem with, because this definitely makes sense of how it looks like they're standardizing claw attacks. If I have an issue with it, it's just that not so much that those two combinations in particular are powerful. I don't think they're broken powerful, they're just good. But the real issue is that some of the other Xenoplague combination with races are maybe too weak and need something unique to try to bring them up to be more competitive. But I will not complain about what I didn't get from this patch. I will try only to focus on the good things I got. So moving on, plague pods. Looks like they even some of the grenades that they didn't explicitly change because it was already a cooldown, they thought were weak. I agree. So buffing them, I have no issue with buffing plague pods. They buffed the healing mod for Xenoplague from range 1 to range 3. I still think it's a very weak mod overall, but this certainly takes it from totally useless to niche usefulness. We'll see. They also buffed Parasitic Symbiosis. I think it's still one of, if not the worst end cap mod. But even if it's still not good, it can't hurt to buff something bad. If they didn't go far enough, again, can't complain about what they didn't do. I can only say it's good that they are at least stouting on what they did do. Moving on to the weapons groups, there's for some reason they split off the status effects here, but I will talk about this all at once. Static Charge now lasts for 2 turns instead of 1, which is a pretty massive buff to the Tier 1 Arc mod, which I don't think I have any issue with. It always was pretty weak, and I don't think going to a 2-turn Static Charge is suddenly going to make it broken good. So that was a buff to the Arc Tree. They also buffed Arc Retaliation, which was already a mod in the Arc Tree that, I mean, it was situationally useful. And I don't think that extra hex of range is really going to make or break that mod. It's still a melee mod. But, again, no issue with the change. Arc Impact, I don't even remember what that would have been. What is Arc Impact? Okay, so Stagger. Okay, so they figured that the Stagger alone wasn't enough. Yeah, that's probably true. I have no issue with buffing the Arc Tree. It was fine, but a lot of its power was only in the very starting, like, endgame level stuff. So, kind of looking at the early and mid-range mods in the Arc Tree and bringing them up is all to the good, in my mind. I'm sure I may be, well, I guess I don't know, I'm sure, but it's possible I'll be proven wrong in a month and a half when someone destroys me with them. For like the 3rd time in this patch notes, yep, biochemicals have been changed for claw abilities. They buffed a single mod in the explosives line. I still think explosives are a pretty weak weapons tree, but that isn't really the fault of the mods. It's more a fault of the units that are available to put them on. You just don't have great choices, especially in the early game. Yes, rocket artillery is nuts with some of those mods, but your other options are not great. You've got the Foeman, you've got the Prospector, you have an alternate attack on the Ramjet. It's pretty bleak as far as the modding part goes. So I don't have any issue with this change specifically. I don't think making a lot of other big changes to the explosive mods would make a big difference, even if I do think it's weak, because I really just think the problem is on the unit end and not the mod end. Because, yes, there's a couple mods that are pretty notably below power, but even if they were at power, I just don't know what would use it. So, moving on to lasers. Lasers got a pretty significant overhaul. Instead of having kind of the split mods of, oh, you can either go with the mod that kills armor or the mod that kills shields, they've streamlined the whole setup to where you now only get the shield disable. You don't get armor anymore, which makes sense. Like for Amazons here, right? You have lasers that can disable shields, and then if you have armor as your problem, then you go for bio. Whereas Kyoko, who's my other laser, is Vanguard. Well, Vanguard, I guess, just kind of gets screwed if they're up against armor, but yeah, I can see. I don't know. Well, let's talk about the other changes first, because I think overall it's a net buff to lasers. Yes, it's going to be a struggle specifically for Vanguard, specifically against armor, but in return for losing that power, Incinerator module got way stronger now that it's from burning to immolation. Similarly, the laser precision module, they now have access to extra range. And hard light at 2 is crazy, but you now have access to extra range. You have dazzler systems. I will not bemoan what laser got. I think the laser weapon tree did just fine. It was also the expensive tree, right? So just by virtue of everything going down 1 or even more tech tiers, that alone is a big buff to the tree entirely. So I think laser came out of all these changes just fine. Oh, they also got a defensive mod. That's right, hard light. Where is hard light? Come on. Oh, the Stagger Impact one is a defensive mod. Okay. Okay. Interesting. You can tell I haven't played specifically with it yet, but, huh. Alright. And the Dazzler Systems is also a defensive mod, which, yep, be blinding units and get +2 shields. So, yeah, pretty good. Overall, I think lasers got net buffed, which they're going to have to be considering how good Sonic is, but we'll talk about that in a hot minute. Psionics. Massive change here. Big deal. You no longer, just for free, can ignore all armor and all psi resists by putting on a damage channel changing mod, which is a huge deal. That's very, very good. I should say it's a nerf, but it's very good for the health of the game. Well, that's because I'm looking at the wrong thing here, is why I don't have the right description. Being able to put one mod on that is going to give you an inflict, but then also keep the armor bypass and ignore the psionic damage resist that people would look to try to help them when they know you're going psi. It was unbalanced. Like, that was just unbalanced to be able to bypass basically all defenses except specifically shields with low investment. You know, this one tier 1 mod, and you could ignore everything except shields, and then if you actually go to the tier 2, on the off chance that whoever you're fighting at thermal resist, which is rare. But this is a much more real choice now, and there's a lot just, I think, more counterplay available by this change existing. They buffed Focus Flames, right, because burning got weaker. So they changed burning and then buffed Focus Flames. And I guess, yeah, in general, there really always isn't a ton of ways. Well, I don't know. They probably didn't have to buff Focus Flames, but this is enough of a change that I'll let this go by. Actually, they buffed both of them, but these lines are the ones that matter. These other two lines are kind of just oh yeah, we also made this change so it doesn't suck too bad, but this is a pretty big hit to psionics, which was deserved. We already talked about static charge. Burning and immolation got changed up a little bit. Accuracy buff got raised for both of them, and then immolation lost a little bit of damage, which is probably outweighed by the extra accuracy application. So I actually don't, there's not too many things that do burning anymore. I guess Focus Flames does, and there might be 1 or 2 like NPC mods or something, but a lot of it's just going straight to immolate now, which is interesting. Pretty actual kind of significant pass here to the NPC faction units. Just straight up across the board, everything's cheaper. NPC faction units always were kind of an emergency button as opposed to a like strategy you would go with in a game. I don't think this across the board cheapness will change that, but it could. Maybe if you go Celestian or Syndicate or both, you'll have enough influence that going heavy into NPCs will be worthwhile. We'll see. And then after that, we just have a huge laundry list of balance changes, which I think I agree with all of them. Autonom got buffed in a very interesting way. It is now an 11 range unit, the only one in the game to my knowledge. I'm not even sure if you can get to 11 range with mods on anything anymore. Maybe if you have some... Yeah, I don't know. This might be the only way to be 11 range now. I'd have to think about that, but certainly it's the only one that does it unmodded. It's still a very weird unit to fight against because it can only shoot every other turn, and then it's got that weird debuff skill, but that's a cool tweak to a unit that I thought was a little underpowered. Soldier Bee got buffed. Cool. Psyfish, Spawn, and Chrysalis both got buffed quite a bit. Spawn now cannot be flanked, which, I mean, that just makes sense. Let's look at the Spawn here. What would you flank here? It's just a floating head. So yeah, I agree with that one. That's pretty good. Chrysalis is a small target, so yeah, I always thought the low tier Psyfish stuff was very squishy. And I like how, since it seems like they agreed with me, they didn't just give them more HP. They kept the kind of weakness here of raw HP for these guys, but one of them got small target, and then the other one got cannot be flanked. So cool little changes there to kind of increase their survivability in non-traditional ways, and ways that make sense for the NPCs, or for that NPC race. Forgotten Golem got buffed. Yep, I think that's fine. Forgotten Shattered Elk got nerfed. I think that's very fine. The Paragon Soldier got buffed. I think now it is, oh yeah, and that same 2-tone cooldown on its grenade. I think it is essentially just a trooper now, like exactly a trooper. Let's take a look. If we go to Vanguard, open a new tab, very quickly check if the soldier and the trooper are exactly alike. So 41, 32, 41, 32, 9 damage and an 8 grenade, 9 damage and 8 grenade. So, okay, yeah, they're exactly the same except, better prime and then Imperial augments instead of steady aim. I don't know what I would say. If I could build the soldier, would I build the soldier over the trooper? I mean, if I had access to something that buffed the augments, I definitely would, but yeah, interesting change there. Let's continue looking here. The guard, decrease shield bypass from flanks from 4 to 2. What is that? Oh, for energy shield. Okay. Okay, so yeah, slight buff looks like. If I remember right, Imperial Augments might have given it another point or two of shields, which is why that would have ever mattered, because by default it didn't. No issue with that. I thought the Guard was a pretty solid unit, but I won't complain to making NPC units that much better. It's fine. The mod, I think that's a nerf. I don't remember if it had a cooldown or what. I mean, I never see some of that high tier NPC stuff, so I'm not going to worry about it. The truck got buffed, which is a good thing. It's very scary now. That is a ton of damage on single action abilities, but I always thought the truck really sucked. And then some of the other high tier spacer stuff. Yep, no complaints with these NPC changes. They don't matter too much for the games I play, but I like that they would be more competitive now, and fighting against them, having some of these units be a little more of a threat than they used to be is also, to me, a benefit. I won't go through the fixes. I don't think there were any in here that I really saw that was like, oh, thank God they did that. So I may just be forgetting or didn't read them close enough. I usually just kind of don't get too wrapped around what the fixes are exactly. But Overall, good patch. Not much here that I disagree with. There was things that I maybe would have liked to have get changed that didn't, but I understand with the current world climate and just the general kind of when they put out T-Rex and stuff, they're not going to do another big giant patch like T-Rex. Certainly not as part of a DLC. Maybe they try to sneak one out between this DLC and the next one. I don't know, but we'll find out. In the meantime, the changes they did make were good changes. I'm always excited to see what might come up in the future as far as patch notes and stuff. The game has consistently been getting better. There's just the base game. The stuff that's free in the patches is just drastically better now and more balanced now than it was originally. So kudos once again to our friends here at not Paradox but Triumph. Well, and Paradox I guess, but specifically Triumph. They're just amazing devs. I said I would talk a bit about Shakarn, so let's do that. Let's just look at the race. So Shakarn are a friendly neighborhood lizard men, infiltrators. I guess there's the literal infiltrator, but they've got the two case. I don't know the flavor, but they've got the more like thick warfare boys and then the skinny little stealth boys. Very interesting lineup. Again, part of that is the headliner. The very obvious thing is they've got this dual channel on many of their attacks, not all of them. That is powerful. It's not so powerful explicitly because they have access to 2 weapons channels or 2 damage channels. It changes the math slightly for when breakpoints of when stuff becomes 1 more damage point greater or less. When you start stacking your 10% damage modifiers versus the armor defense. In general, I think that's always just a wash. I don't think it's a net gain. The real interesting part of this is that their weapons then, they're not only 2 different damage channels, but they're laser and sonic weapons. So they are able to apply laser and sonic mods to these attacks, which really starts opening up some dangerous combinations very quickly. So that's pretty cool. Their scout has a value summon, and it's a low damage but high impact attack. Combat-wise, this is, I think, it's a bad scout in Scout v Scout combat, but I think it's one of the better scouts to just toss into a stack as emergency filler. Recon buoy on a super, like a summonable unit on a super cheap unit is powerful, even if that summonable unit itself does not deal damage, cannot move. Just being able to pop this down and block some areas off, restrict your opponent's movement, maybe force them to use an action on just a nothing, because the 20% easier to hit is not insignificant. So it's a neat little utility ability to toss onto a scout. Looking at their tier 1, their Crow unit, I really like the Raider. The fights I've had with it and a couple of fights I've had against it, I think people are sleeping on this unit. I've seen discussions in a couple of different forums and stuff where people like, man, the Raider just seems useless. The Deadeye is where all the damage is, but I don't think so. I think you can definitely focus build with the Raider as the again the main point of your build, which isn't something every T1 can do, but the Raider is at that level of utility and damage. I mean it has an AoE concussion ability. Yes, it's only 4 strength, but man oh man, that's strong. And 12 damage on a repeating attack on a tier 1 is a ton of damage. I don't care that it's at short range. That's just going to kill things quickly. So I don't sleep on the Raider. Yes, it's a difficult unit to use effectively, but if you can use it effectively, it tears people up. I guess before I forget, I had talked about the dual weapons channels, but I should also quickly talk about the other specific things for the Shakarn, which is they get a little bit of regeneration every turn if they were dealt damage, and then they also have this status effect debilitation or status effect vulnerability. In general, I think these two mostly balance out. It definitely changes how you approach fighting them as a race, I think. You like to have, like, you can start trading out pure damaging things, and maybe you look a little bit less at action removal and a little bit more towards inflicts as a way to start addressing them if you have a fight come up against them. Similarly, on the other side, this status effect vulnerability is something that you have to take into account when you're trying to play with them. So I don't think that either one of these abilities is so good or so weak as to drastically change what they try to do, but it's an interesting combination to see that. And yeah, we'll see as I get more experience with them. My opinion may change. We'll find out. Infiltrator is, I mean, to me, it's immediately, I think, one of my top 2 or 3 favorite units in the game. This is another unit I think people are sleeping on. Maybe it's different in single player since things tend to take longer and people play slower. But in my multiplayer experience, the Infiltrator definitely pays for itself. Now, I don't think it's a unit you build 6 of. Like, you don't have full stacks of Infiltrators running around. But that was never the point, because it's, you know, it's labeled as a specialist / support unit, right? It's not meant to be that core damage dealer of your army that you're focused around. And even, yes, there's supports that can kind of do that, but even the ones that are close to that level just really, they need other stuff around them to function. The Infiltrator is phenomenal to have like 1 of, maybe 2 of in your stacks. Because they're very survivable. It's not listed in this unit card, but the first time they get popped out of Holo Shift, the unit doesn't immediately die. It heals. I don't know if it's a percentage or if it's a flat amount. I think it might be a flat 20 health, but it heals some health and then it teleports, similar to how the runner does for the Syndicate. So this 40 hit points is deceptive. It's got more than that. And it also copies the raw defensive stats of whatever it's taking. So depending on what you take, it might even be more than that still. Anyways, it's very tanky. It actually hits pretty hard. 18 damage at 7 range single action is nothing to sneeze at. It for unmodded attack, that's pretty good. So just the raw unit by itself is like, yes, you wouldn't build this unit if it couldn't shift, but it's not immediately becoming useless once it's popped out. Being able to take 1 unit, restricted to tier 1, tier 2, yeah, whatever, that will never be a real problem in a multiplayer game. Well, maybe in the really late game ones that are lots of people, but in the 1v1s, 2v2s, you'll always have something to take, and your prime target is going to be other support units, right? Take the Biomancer, take the Transcendent. But even just taking a Sniper or taking any tier 2 unit is probably a net buff, because again, you can play pretty fast and loose with whatever you've taken, because it's a fake unit. Once it quote-unquote dies, you're still going to be left with a partial health Infiltrator that's going to be teleporting, hopefully, to somewhere a little more safe. So I think the Infiltrator is very good. It isn't built to be the focus of your army, but every time I've fought with an Infiltrator, like that starting Infiltrator you get when you boot up the game, I never regret having that along. The one thing I will say is it's a harder decision to go through the effort of building a support barracks and popping another one or two of these out, because it isn't a healer, right? It doesn't have an ability to cleanse you or give you 20 more hit points. Like it, I don't know if it's enough value to justify actually building stuff. But if you get your hands on infiltrators, you will never regret having it. So again, as the meta develops, as people get more experience here with the Shakarn, maybe that opinion will change. But I think the infiltrator is totally fine. I don't think it's too weak. I don't think it's too strong either, which it definitely could have been. If this could have taken tier 3 units, if it could have taken stolen mods, like that would have been broken as hell. But I think somehow, even for a unit that I don't, like when I first looked at it, I'm like, there's no way that's balanced. It's pretty damn close. I don't know how much more they could like change with the setup of the infiltrator to put it closer to where it would need to be. So extremely cool unit. I love the design here. Both, well, visually, thematically, mechanically, just everything about the infiltrator is awesome. The Deadeye, I hate. I mean, I hate having to play against it. It's a good unit, very good unit. It's kind of a weird pseudo sniper. I think, like, because it can shoot, yes, it's a 7 range, but it's a 3 hex line, so it can shoot up to 9 range. You have to treat it as a sniper. But then what it really is just the single action, just destroy a unit. Shooting, again, 18 on a single action, that's kind of just the going rate now. And having it a laser sonic that you can mod up is crazy. It is cumbersome, so it's not super maneuverable if you can start pressuring it with melee units or something like that. But being cumbersome doesn't usually affect it if you have a bunch of raiders around that can screen for it. Just in general, I think that basic core gameplay of Deadeyes backed up by raiders is very powerful. Yeah, I won't talk too much more about the Deadeye other than I think it's a very good unit. And it's a bit of a toss-up over whether I think the Raider or the Deadeye should be your main focus in most games. Like you can make it work with either one, I believe. And I don't know if there's really optimal between the two. But interesting setup there. Propagator, I haven't seen too many people play with. And the one time I fought against it, I was actually surprised. Like, I had figured this would be just a nuts unit, and it wasn't really. This Dissonance ability looks very strong, but it's a full action, which really restricts its use. The Sono Repeater, high impact, yes, but pretty mediocre damage for a tier 2, even by flyer standards. And this unit can only take sonic mods, so no laser mods. Shakarn have some good defense mods, not like enough to really start stacking and make this thing tanky like Engulfers or anything like that. It's a fine unit. I don't think it's one of the problematic flying units, though. It's not at the level of Engulfers or gunships of where I'm concerned that it exists. I think it's okay. The propagation is a neat trick. I haven't yet had it be a problem. I've never tried to use it, and playing against other people that went propagators, I haven't seen it used against me. So I think this is, I don't want to say it's a flavor thing, but I don't think it's highly impactful. Let's go to the Firebrand, because I think it's actually before these other two units in the tech tree. I think the Firebrand, if it wasn't a tier 3 and hard to get, the Firebrand would be broken. I mean, it's just better than the other tier 3 melee units. Like, you do a direct comparison of this unit versus the Wrecker or whatever the heck the Kyoko one is called. I can't remember right now. It's just better. Firstly, because it also has a range attack, unlike those other two units, but aside from that, it's cannot be flanked for no reason. It's got an extra defensive stat. I think it just does more raw damage. Plus, it has this impaired ability. Yeah, I think it's melee laser sonic claw. Interesting. Yeah, I think the fire. If there's any unit that I can look at and say yes, this unit here is definitely getting nerfed on the Shakarn roster, it's the Firebrand. Like, there's no way that this stays as is past 1 or 2 patches. This is going to get nerfed. Refractor is their tank unit. Well, it's their artillery unit, tank/artillery, because it's got the tank stat line. But it's got this interesting ebb and flow mechanic. I haven't seen this in play ever, but I like what they're going for here. As far as, yep, you shoot with your primary to power up your secondary ability. Considering that it has an artillery attack but tank stats, that's a little concerning to me. Again, though, it's so high up the tech tree, I don't think I'll ever really get the experience with or against it enough to be able to make any particular call on that balance. But I like what they're trying to go for there. Tactician, again, it's falling into that the tier 3 support units never quite seem good enough to go for. I mean, tier 3 is hard enough to try, but the supports are consistently mentioned by a lot of people that do play with them as feeling weak at the tier 3 level. So, you know, your Syndicate has that tier 3 support unit, and then the who's the other one? I'm forgetting. Well, whatever. Either way, that's where this guy fits. He's at that level, that tier 3 support, and I don't know, having a once per battle summon, and the Sleeper Agent isn't bad. Like, it's okay. This also does damage. That's just a very strong ability. At range 12 is nuts. Plus it has the heal and teleport that the Phase Manipulator has, which is already, that was also crazy good. Plus it has the action reset that the Siphoner has, that you can trade 1 action for 3 actions. This, and on top, well, okay, so its primary attack is weak for its tier though, which makes sense because again it's a support. It's floating by nature. I mean, a lot of what's in this unit just screams, man, this looks broken, but it just might be how good you have to be a competitive tier 3 support, since all the other ones sound so bad. And even then, if you look at like the Syndicate one, that has a mind control, which on paper you would say is broken, but even if in practice it's not really. So we'll see on the Tactician. It's late enough that I personally won't get much experience with it, but that doesn't mean it won't get changed for other reasons. Let's quick, since we talked about Sleeper Agent, it's listed as a tier 1, and surprisingly it's actually got tier 1 stats. This is not just the Tactician summon, but you can also get it as a hero summon from a perk very early. It's like it's either level 3 or 5 that you can get the summon a Sleeper Agent once per battle. And as a free summon, again, you've got actual tier 1 defensive stats. You have a tier 1, if not slight, yeah, a solid tier 1 level melee attack, and with Flanker, this is a tier 1 level range attack as well. Slightly weaker, but more of the power is in the melee end than the ranged end with this guy. Squishy, but at the cost of free, I'd never complain about it. It's a good unit. Then finally you have the Shakarn as their tier 4, which has this Omni Beam. I've seen a couple of videos of it going off. It's pretty crazy. Again, I'll never see it probably ever. Maybe I'll fight against it with the AI once or something, but looks pretty cool. And I love the massive charged hyper beam, omni beam, whatever. Um, being at an attack like that being added to the game is very thematic on point. Overall, it's a pretty cool roster, very flavorful, neat mechanics being introduced, and much more balanced than like Haruto was when Haruto came out. I think Shakarn is. There's still a couple things that I look at. Again, specifically the Firebrand looks well above par. And I didn't talk about the mods. The Sonic tree is a little iffy. It looks a little too good, but for the most part, the units are all seem to be pretty well on point. And the racial mods don't seem too far off base either. So I don't think we're going to see a huge raft of changes coming in for the Shakarn. They seem pretty good, but very cool. Glad that they're in the DLC. I liked playing with them. I didn't mind playing against them. They're not obnoxious, so good race. I haven't ever seen the invasion go off, even though in every game I play, we've set it to the earliest possible. That still is until turn 40, and games just don't go that long in what I play. So maybe someday I'll actually see what the invasion itself brings, but it's not quite as obvious of a mechanic or usable of a mechanic as the anomalies were from Revelations. But either way, I think that's it for the Shakarn. I think I don't need to talk anymore about invasions. We already spent a bunch of time talking about Diplodocus, so nothing more there. And that means that the video's over. So for anyone that listened all the way through, thanks. I appreciate it. And as always, enjoy Planetfall.